With the backing of CIA, of course. The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand. We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although, it is a serious organization. I understand.
Hey everyone! Well, a lot of people are tagging me as they mention Mr. Jones on social media, including posting clips of Walter Duranty lying his face off. Walter Duranty, of course, was nicknamed Our Man in Moscow. He was considered the voice of all that was going on in Stalin's Soviet Union. He won the Pulitzer Prize for a series of glowing articles that were straight up Soviet propaganda. There's been a massive worldwide outcry over the years to try to get his Pulitzer Prize revoked. And keep in mind, he wrote these articles at a time when the Kremlin was laying the groundwork, putting in motion what would become the Holodomor, Stalin's genocide famine in Ukraine, a man-made famine, artificially created because they didn't have nuclear weapons back then. They didn't have these supersonic missiles. So how do you wipe out millions of people at the same time? You systematically take away their food sources, anything they can use to feed themselves, and you seal off the borders so they can't escape and aid can't be let in, and you starve them to death. And that's how millions died in an extremely short time frame of around 1 year. And Duranty covered it up. He wrote in the New York Times, "There is no famine." Welcome to Gaslit Nation's special emergency bonus episode. Unfortunately, I felt compelled to address Walter Duranty's 2-hour interview with mass murdering dictator and source of so much pain and suffering in the world, Vladimir Putin, the Botoxed face of the KGB dictatorship. Yes, I know it's the FSB, but it's still the same KGB playbook after all these years. And yes, I know I called Tucker Carlson Walter Duranty, all intentional, of course. First, I want to just share a personal note. Back in 2004, 20 years ago, when I was finishing up college at UC Davis, I was studying Soviet history and trying to figure out what to do with my life, I set my heart on making a film, a proper, dramatic film about Walter Duranty. He was my gateway drug into the whole Mr. Jones journey because he's so morbid. I was fascinated by that morbid brain of his. What compels a so-called journalist to go against all the ethics of the profession, the noble profession of journalism, of fact-finding, of truth, to assist in the mass murder of millions of innocent people? That was my morbid fascination in college. In fact, if you read one of my blue book in-class exams from a history class around that time for Professor Michael Saylor, it was in an intellectual history class. My in-class exam, which I still have, which I should do a video of and show you, that exam reads nearly exactly like my script for what would become Mr. Jones, the journalistic thriller I wrote and produced, directed by the great Agnieszka Holland, and starring, of course, James Norton, Vanessa Kirby, and Peter Sarsgaard as Walter Duranty. And I'm seeing Peter Sarsgaard all over social media now because of what Tucker Carlson is doing. If I sound a little stuttery to you, it's because I took a couple days off this past week to go to Colorado, of all places, to thank the wonderful Supreme Court of Colorado. I went there to visit an old friend of mine to get our families together, our little girls together to play. And it was just some time off to charge up my batteries for our big battle ahead, for our journey together to Mordor. And so I had a wonderful time in Colorado. I love Colorado. My friend there who lives in Denver is giving me all sorts of information about the amazing work that the mayor of Denver is doing for unhoused people, and how much in the spirit of Finland and the Scandinavian nations that those pilot programs are in. So I was really heartened to hear about that. And thank you to the people of Colorado. And I'm sorry to the world and Americans everywhere about our Supreme Court, including the democratically appointed justices who just didn't go for it and keeping an insurrectionist, a violent career criminal insurrectionist off the ballot by playing the old, well, what if they do that to Democrats? What if they do that to us, try to keep us off the ballot? This is a very unique circumstance, and Republicans don't need a reason or don't need precedent to ever fight dirty. They've always fought dirty against us. They've always lowered the bar. They've always carried out the unthinkable. And it's such a dodge, a moral dodge by all the justices, of course, including the usual mullahs, the Iranian mullahs, on ours, the extreme Catholics, but the democratically appointed justices. It was very heartbreaking to see that they didn't take the stand needed. So I will link to Eli Mistal's analysis since he followed that Supreme Court hearing. And I want to thank, once again, Colorado Supreme Court and the good people of Colorado who continue to fight locally where they live to ensure that hopefully the Electoral College in Colorado goes to not Trump anyway. Okay. But thank you so much to everyone who took a stand in that important case. Just back to my personal note, why would I take on such a project like Mr. Jones back in 2004 when most of the world was turned to the Middle East following 9/11? The answer is very simple. I was scared of the fast-changing world, the explosion of the internet, which was already causing big disruptions across industries like media, the one I was looking to join. The world seemed to be changing so fast and out of control, heading towards World War with Bush being rewarded for his mass murder and being allowed to stay president despite what he did in Afghanistan and then the hundreds of civilians he was about to kill in Iraq with the Iraq War. It was just a time of such despair where I tried to look into the future and I couldn't see one. And I wanted to exile abroad. I wanted to really exile off the planet itself. And I wanted just to disappear. And the way I tried to disappear was going back in time and spending time with my beloved late grandfather, who was the world to me growing up. And so I really devoted myself to trying to get my screenplay made out of tribute to my grandfather and the countless millions who suffered under Russian imperialism, which of course continues to this day. And so that project really saved my life. It showed me how to live again. It gave me something to live for. It helped me find my voice in this world and to navigate my way through and not to hide, to actually stand out and stick my neck out and just say what needs to be said. I really found my center from the heroic journalism of Gareth Jones and the fact that Orwell and his wife fought to get the truth out as well through the power of art. And all those years working on my screenplay with not a chance in the world of ever getting it produced because I just didn't have the connections. I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to be there spiritually in that project. I wanted my heart to be in its incubator with this project. And that's why I always say on this show, art is survival. Art is survival because art saved my life with Mr. Jones. It was never supposed to be anything than that. And what it turned into, unfortunately, was history repeating. I always knew in all those years that Fox News was as dangerous as the Kremlin. I always had my eye on Fox News as the Walter Duranty of today. I saw them as the threat all those years ago, more than the Kremlin itself at that time. And now those two forces of darkness are joined together against the rest of us. I want to just share, by an amazing act of sheer coincidence, it was announced this same week, when Tucker Carlson announced his big suck-off of Putin in Moscow, that there's going to be a graphic novel adaptation of my film, Mr. Jones, by the publisher Oni Press, which will be available starting September 4th. The graphic novel adaptation of Mr. Jones will be called In the Shadow of Stalin, and it will include deleted scenes from the film. When I was trying to get Mr. Jones produced, I had read somewhere that the Kevin Costner film Dances with Wolves started out with a script that couldn't get produced. So the screenwriter turned it into a novel. When I was desperate to get Mr. Jones made, I decided all those years ago to try to get it made into a graphic novel first, in the hopes of that helping the chances of the film finally getting made. Instead, through a series of unexpected but happy events, the film got made first, and the graphic novel ended up taking longer than expected. There are all sorts of delays that are out of my control. And oddly, throughout that process, wiser people around me kept saying, trust the timing, trust the timing. There must be a greater reason to the timing. And sure enough, the graphic novel of Mr. Jones, which I had hoped would come out years and years ago, is finally coming out this year, September 4th, right before the election, when the very survival of Ukraine is on the ballot, showing that this book, In the Shadow of Stalin, is right on time. I'm really excited to share it with you and to talk you through the deleted scenes you'll find in the book, scenes that were wonderful, like what I call the Brexit dinner party scene, with lines inspired by Nigel Farage, Putin fanboy, scenes that didn't make it into the final film, or else the film would have been 3 hours long. So I'm thrilled for that. We'll do all sorts of events around the launch of In the Shadow of Stalin this fall. If you want to see pages of the graphic novel, a sample of some of the pages, go to the show notes for this episode to check that out, and you can pre-order the book there. And I'm so excited to share it with you. I know I keep saying that. Now back to Walter Duranty. But first, before I forget, the wonderful Tristan Snell, a former New York State prosecutor who tirelessly took down Trump University, held Trump accountable before it was fashionable to do so. He was a dog on a bone in this investigation in the years leading up to the 2016 election. He wrote a great book on prosecuting Trump, 12 Steps on How to Do It. And it's not just about getting Trump, finally bringing Trump, a violent insurrectionist, to justice. Tristan Snell's book is really a pocket guide to understanding our legal system, how it works, and how to take down elite criminal impunity generally. Like, we hear all the loopholes the elite take advantage of. Here's how to close those loopholes, and here's how to build pressure to close those loopholes, and so on. It's an excellent, excellent book. I cannot recommend it enough. And the Trump years have turned me into a fangirl of not Merrick Garland, because he sucks. He's the worst person for this critical moment in history. You all know how I feel about Merrick Garland. But lawyers. I love lawyers. Some lawyers during the Trump years, that just random lawyers that wrote letters to the Trump White House telling them to fuck off, and those letters would get published somewhere. There are times where I'd email some of those lawyers being like, that was brilliant, brilliantly done, thank you. And I've made friends with one such lawyer. You know, I just really appreciate dictators go for our legal system first, and the lawyers in the system fighting back against that, they're on the same level of our superstar investigative journalists, people that practice real journalism. And these are the people we need all across our systems to stay in the system and fight like hell against the institutional rot. That is how we're going to survive. So Tristan Snell, from reading his book and communicating with him over Twitter, he's one of the good guys. I trust him. We may feel differently about Merrick Garland. I cannot stand Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland is... You go back to my interview with ProPublica's Jesse Eisinger, who wrote The Chicken Shit Club, about why the DOJ brought no one to justice, no one on Wall Street, for tanking our global economy, for turning it into a thieves' den of illegal gambling. I did a 2-part interview with Jesse that ran at the end of last year. I mean, that goes into what is wrong with the DOJ, and unfortunately is much larger than Merrick Garland, but he's very much the face of that rot. So Tristan Snell will be doing a live taping on Monday, 12 p.m., February 12th, for our Patreon community. To the folks who support the show at the truth teller level or higher, look out for a Zoom link on Monday morning, this coming Monday morning, February 12th. And you can join the discussion. You can raise questions in the chat if you prefer. And the big question coming out the gate for me to Tristan Snell is, why the hell isn't Trump in prison by now? What is going on? So that's how we're going to heat things up fresh out the gate on Monday. I'm really looking forward to that. So let's go back to Walter Duranty. So Tucker's announcement where he posted some propaganda. Our discussion continues, and you can get access to that by signing up at the truth teller level and higher on Patreon at patreon.com/gaslit. To help civilians caught in the crossfire of the Israel-Hamas war, donate to Doctors Without Borders at doctorswithoutborders.org. We also encourage you to donate to the International Rescue Committee, a humanitarian relief organization helping refugees from Ukraine, Syria, Afghanistan, and Gaza. Donate at rescue.org. And if you want to help critically endangered orangutans already under pressure from the palm oil industry, donate to the Orangutan Project at theorangutanproject.org and check your products for any palm oil and research ways, very easy ways online on how to do that. Gaslit Nation is produced by Andrea Chalupa. Our production manager is Nicholas Torres, and our associate producer is Carlin Daigle. Our episodes are edited by Nicholas Torres, and our Patreon exclusives are edited by Carlin Daigle. If you like what we do, leave us a review on iTunes. It helps us reach more listeners. And check out our Patreon. It keeps us going. Original music in Gaslit Nation is produced by David Whitehead, Martin Vissenberg, Nick Farr, Damian Arriaga, and Carlin Daigle. Our logo design was donated to us by Hamish Smith of the New York-based firm Order. Thank you so much, Hamish. Gaslit Nation would like to thank our supporters at the producer level on Patreon and higher. Withrow C. Newell, Lily Wachowski, Kenny Main, Ellen McGirt, Larry Gasson, David Collier, Karen Heisler, Ann Bertino, David East, Ida, Joseph Mara Jr., Julie Matthews, Mark, Matthew Womack, Sean Berg, Kristen Custer, Emmy, Kevin Gannon, Mike Christensen, Sandra Collins, Katie Masuris, James D. Leonard, Leo Chalupa, Carol Golstad, Jason Benke, Marcus J. Trent, Joe Darcy, Ann Marshall, Jeremy Lewis, Treekve, D.L. Singfield, Nicole Spear, Abby Rode, Jans Alstrup Rasmussen, Diana Gallagher, Leah Campbell, Jared Lombardo, and Tanya Chalupa. Thank you all so much for your support of the show. We could not make Gaslit Nation without you.